How you doing?
Hi, Don.
Well, it's working out, I hope, so far.
Hi, Don.
Hey, how's it going?
Very good, you?
Very good. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get everybody in tonight.
My queen is finally laying.
Good.
The new queen.
Yeah.
I was actually happy to see that.
Well, now you can start selling queens.
Next year.
Yeah, Les will buy a few from you. He needs some more stock.
I'm just happy with right now the queen that I have. I don't want any more headaches, you know.
No headaches with queens.
Yeah, but my luck, I know I'll start raising a queen, and other things will happen, and
Well, the only thing that happens is you'll end up getting your name out there, and then you can't supply enough. That's the problem I'm having right now. Working daylight to dark and can't make enough.
well, I'm planning on buying a few from you next year.
Well, don't wait till next year. Get them started now.
But I was happy with the new queen that I was telling you about that I was worried about.
Yeah.
I was happy. Her abdomen wasn't as thick last time, but when I checked her today, she was pretty good. She was bloated pretty good, ready to go.
Well, the size really don't have a whole lot to do with it. If you're getting a small cell beaters, they look small. They don't usually start getting big until probably 3-4 weeks after they're laying.
But well, her body was last time when I saw it, it was tiny, but now you could tell by looking at it, it actually grew a little bigger.
Yeah, that's the normal process.
So I assumed she was mated because I saw eggs in all the cells.
Oh yeah, yeah. They normally don't lay unless they're already mated. I see Michael has joined us tonight. He hasn't been in here in a while.
Hey, Don.
Yeah.
I was going to move a couple of hives over to the farm this morning, and last night there were bees outside everywhere. So we waited till 4:30, got up early, figured they'd be in. They were still out.
Yeah. I mean, I had a student come over here today, and I was explaining that. We used to go at 4:30, 5 o'clock before, an hour to 2 hours before daybreak when we had bees in orange groves and put screens over them. Then we'd go up to the restaurant and have breakfast and come back, and you'd find a pile of bees outside. A lot of bees, when they get to a certain temperature, they'll just land on a branch and get up underneath the leaf and that. They all don't come in every night all the time. Some of them come in the next day.
We never did move our bees.
Well, you're going to lose a few. The best thing to do is throw a nuke in the place where you moved that box and throw you a frame with the least amount of eggs in there and let it make a queen for you.
Okay.
That's another way of making queens.
That sounds good.
You don't need a lot of bees. Take the least amount of brood that you have. 3 to 5 inches of brood, different ages, a little bit of honey on top. That's all you need. 5-frame box, reduce the entrance down. 3/8 by maybe 1 inch wide, just enough for 2 bees, 3 bees to pass side by side, and that way they don't get robbed out. And you'd be surprised how easy they are to make queens.
Yeah. We're trying to build some of these up. I'd like to see them put a little more sugar syrup in the boxes for winter because we took quite a bit of honey off of them in August here. And but when I do that, they seem to just make more brood and make more bees, and that takes more food. So you know, it's kind of working against yourself when you try to help them too.
Well, that's the thing I was going to try to talk about tonight is if you got a brood chamber, you should have a little bit of honey on the outside frames, and all the inside frames should be full of brood. Maybe an inch to an inch and a half band across the top with honey, and then put your supers on. That way, when you compact them down for winter, you have more bees. Because if you're getting honey bound and a lot of honey in that brood chamber, the pattern is going to get smaller and smaller. And if you don't pull that out or work it to the outside, or another thing, you can put another box on, another deep, and work it upstairs, and then checkerboard. Put empty frames down below. That way, some of them have time to fill it out and make you brood.
Okay, thanks.
How you doing, James? David, how you doing?
Doing very good, sir.
Good. Join right in here.
First time I've tried to join in.
Well, we have trouble here sometimes we get in, sometimes we don't have good audio. Tonight seems to work, and we're probably going to end up having a pretty good full house, looks like.
Very good, very good.
If you got any questions, just shoot them in there, and we'll see if we can figure something out for you.
Okay.
Are you shipping any queens yet or no?
Well, I'm selling them faster right now. I don't have extra ones out. I usually keep 6 or 8 and sometimes 10 at a time here, but I'm getting a lot of people local calling up and buying. Sometimes they want to come buy 3 or 4 and end up buying everything I got. So right now, don't have no extras.
Yeah, you were talking.
If it stays cool next week, I can ship.
You were talking about being honey bound and that stuff. My bees, they're bringing honey in like crazy, like nectar and that.
Yep.
And the brood
Keep
chamber.
an eye on it.
I'm assuming they're building up for the winter because we have real good winters here, where it's cold. So, but they're packing it in the brood chambers and that stuff. They're still laying eggs in that.
Oh yeah. Well, the main thing you got to keep an eye on is make sure that they're not getting honey bound, because when the goldenrod starts coming in, they will fill that bottom up real fast, and you'll have a full box of honey with no place for the queen to lay.
Well, what I did on August 1st, I put a honey super on, and they're starting to fill that up pretty good. By word, I might have to put a second box on.
Well, keep an eye on it, because sometimes if you got a good queen, they'll shoot right up in that honey super and start laying eggs up there.
Oh, she is. She's not up there yet, but she's a great queen.
You better hang on to that one then.
I'm gonna try. And the size of her, she's fast too.
She's one of those ridge runners, huh?
Oh yeah, she's fast.
Well, just out of curiosity, Don, what's the biggest queen cell you've seen?
The biggest queen cell is not always the best. Sometimes if they get too long, then there's what they call emergency one. It was a late larva that they used, and they overfeed it, so it ends up being overly extended, and usually it's not a good queen.
Yeah, because I went ahead and split that big hive into 3 yesterday, and the one that made the queen cells, there was 2 that looked like they were about 2.5 inches long, and the rest of them were normal size.
Yeah, 2.5-inch one is definitely no good.
That's interesting.
Good morning, or good afternoon. I see you got your daughter helping you tonight.
This is my granddaughter.
Your granddaughter. Good. You better teach her how to do them bees.
She holds the frames for me while I cut them queen cells out.
Well, that's good.
I might build some 8-frame hives tomorrow.
You better start building pretty quick because you're getting late in the season to start building. Right
Well,
now, you could be getting swarms.
Well, I have some hives already built. I built some, but I'm gonna start building 8-frames and start doing away with the 10s.
Well, I'm going to do a video on how to convert them instead of trying to cut them down. Just run a router down through the center, put you a partition in there, and you got 2 5-frame nukes that way.
Because I noticed what you were talking about a while ago when you told me why didn't decide to go with the 8-frame. They're getting too heavy.
Well, I try to preach that a lot, but people, they're stuck in their ways. It took me a long time to convince myself, but after your back gives out on you, an 8-frame, when it's deep and it's full of honey, it's still awful heavy when you're getting old.
I wish I talked to you before I actually started beekeeping, then I would have bought the 8-frames.
Well, start converting them to the 2 5-frame. You're going to need, for every hive, you're going to need at least 4 nukes. You got 10 hives, you need 40 nukes. You got to have them ready, not when you're going to build them.
I started building some nukes too. I bought a sheet of 3/4 plywood from Lowe's. It was only $25. I got two deep boxes, 10-frame boxes, 3 nukes, the top lid, and the bottom board for the.
Well, if you're going to make 5-frame nukes, be sure to make them standard, 9 1/4 wide. That's outside dimension. Instead of building them out of plywood, you should have just went back to what they call their culls. And you could buy some boards that are split on the end a little bit or got bad knots in them. A lot of times you can get them pretty much half price, sometimes less than that. Lowe's and Home Depot do the same thing.
What is it called?
It's culls. They have a bin there, or they usually have a cart. Sometimes they have plywood there that's got a big chunk missing out of the side where a tow motor hit it, or the boards have cracks in them. You can buy that shelving board that has cracks in it. At the ends, it's usually cracked up 5-6 inches. Sometimes they mark that stuff down half.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you don't have to spend top dollar for your building stuff.
I never get that lucky though. I tried, those signs that you made the beetle traps out of?
You're not buying them now, are you?
No, I'm trying to find them laying on the side of the road or somebody's getting rid of them. I can't find any.
Anytime they get, well, the next election they got coming up, you'll have them everywhere. You'll have 40, 50 on every street.
It's like they know I'm looking for them and they take them quick.
I've got a stack of them. I wish I could ship you.
There you go.
Then they use that, I don't know, the new type of signs. It's like a sheet of flexible plastic. You know what I'm talking about?
For the signs, they use, I think it's called cordite. It's corrugations, looks like corrugated cardboard, but yet it's made out of plastic or some kind of a plastic substrate.
That's what I've been looking for, but like the newer signs I guess they're making now is that flexible plastic that you can roll up and stuff like that, almost like it's a cloth.
That's the cheap signs. Most of them are that corrugated stuff. Now, when you drive around and you see somebody who's running for some kind of office, jot the phone number down. Whenever the election's over, tell him to give you a call. He'll be glad for you to drive around and pick all his signs up because he's supposed to pick them up. 1 or 2 of them signs is all you need to do several hundred of those beetle traps.
I'm actually pretty good. That one mite I was telling you about, I don't have any more.
Mm-hmm. Well, you get eventually you'll get more than you can use.
Hey, Don, after a queen hatches, how long does it usually take her to get mated on average?
Well, I would say up to 3 days, depending if you got good flying weather. humidity, no rain, stuff like that, temperatures?
Well, I had a queen hatch out Sunday, and it's been beautiful all week. Cool, no humidity, no rain. And I put her in all of them in a nuke box out of the Queen Castle on Thursday. And I got in there to look at them Friday, couldn't find her. Come out, she was out on the front of the box, outside. And then today, I seen her come out there and fly off and come back. I don't know what's going on with her.
Well, sometimes queens will make, quite a few different times. Depends on how many drones you got where you're living at. If you got just 1 or 2 hives, they might make a dozen trips out. But, you're not going to have eggs and you're not going to have larvae if you don't have no pollen coming in. So keep an eye on the bees. If they're bringing pollen in, 3 to 4 days, she should be laying. Now, if you've seen her go out and come back again, more than likely you don't have no drones around.
No,
if you do have drones, they're immature.
I've got 10 hives. They're full of drones.
Well, maybe it's the same line. Nature has a way of, keep from inbreeding, but, worst comes to worst, they'll breed with them. That's one reason you should have several different lines of bees so you don't get a bunch of inbreeding.
Well, I went up there to Matt in Indianapolis and got one of your queens up there Wednesday night.
Okay.
So, change things around.
Well, Matt's been staying pretty busy. He called me this morning. He's having the same problem. He can't make queens fast enough. Right now is the best time for you to jump in there and start doing it on a commercial basis. Get you 50, 100 hives, sell all the nukes, all the queens you can make.
I got another year now retired. I can do that.
Well, you start on now. You got to start building a foundation for it right now. You have to have a good storehouse. So you can't start in next year and say, I'm going to start selling bees. You've got to build your numbers up because you ain't going to have time to build them once your orders start coming in. They'll keep your boxes empty for you. The seller's market out there right now. William, if you got any questions, just yell it in there.
Oh, I will, Don. I just, like I said, I got to wait till next spring to get my bees, so I'm just
Now's the time to
listening.
build boxes then.
Oh, I'm working on that stuff. I plan on having everything in line by the end of the year or beginning of the year, and then have everything set up. Talk to a guy about getting a couple nukes to get started with.
Well, right now is the time when you should make a decision if you're going to go with 8-frame stuff or 10-frame stuff, and have a plan what you're going to do.
Yeah, I'm already going to go with the 8-frame. I'm going to have 2 8-frame hives and enough material to have a base, a telescopic lid, and a brood box, in case anything happens where I, can fill another box from those 2. Yeah. So I'm going to have all 8-frame medium supers.
Well, now, all 8-frame mediums has good points and it has bad points, but if down the line you want to sell bees, you're going to be able to sell some medium nukes, but there's a lot of people that the majority of them want deeps.
I don't plan on really getting into the business of selling bees.
Well, you're always going to have somebody that comes up and says, "Wow, I want to have some bees. Could you sell me some?"
Well, I'm still going to go ahead and get the bees and stuff like that, but I've been sort of disappointed with seeing the activity around my house. I see very few bumblebees, and I haven't seen a honeybee in a long time.
Well, if you're living in an area where they got a lot of those lawn services, the lawn services come out and they spray stuff in that yard and kill all your bees.
No, I live in a rural area. I live back in a holler. You know,
Yeah.
mostly all woods and farms.
Well, that's good. As long as you don't have some big farms up there that's using those GMO crops, that's bad on the bees.
Well, these are all small family farms,
Yeah.
real small. You know, nothing major.
Your horse farms, or maybe even some people that raise pigs or cattle, and if they do it on a small scale, it's pretty much pretty good, you know. Your
You know what?
horse farms, they use the alfalfa or the different grasses, some clover. It's good for the bees, but the only problem they have, some of the horse people, before alfalfa blooms, they want to take and cut it down. They said it's got more nutrition for the horses, but it ain't doing that for the bees until it starts
Yeah.
to bloom.
Yeah, there's a lot of hay fields around here, but not as many alfalfa fields. That's more over in the valley area where they have more of the dairy and stuff like that. Mainly, I do have one beef farm right up the road from me, but I don't think he has any alfalfa out.
Well, you know, going all mediums has advantages. It has some disadvantages. A lot of women, they like the mediums. They have one size box all through their bee yard. They don't have to run around and look for different size boxes, different size frames. You pretty much got one size all the way through. You know, the only disadvantage is if you're going to run for honey, you've got to run 3 to 4 boxes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the disadvantages. Now, we have a few people come up here that are kind of handicapped. They'll work a wheelchair, and a lot of them are running mediums, 5 frame, and that way they can handle them. Some of them have a little, it's like a little leather apron or a vinyl type apron, and they can sit that medium 5 frame on their lap, and they can take their wheelchair and go from their bee yard up to where they work their honey. So
Well, I just figured with all the mediums that I'd have that interchangeability aspect of it.
that's one advantage.
Yeah, like I said, I don't plan on. I'm not doing this to get into the honey business or the bee business. I'm just doing this as a hobby, just for family and personal use of honey. Plus, just trying to help the bees. That's all. You know, I'm just trying to do a thing.
You know, I have several people that I did business with that they said the very same thing. I only want 1 or 2 hives. And a couple of years later, you know, they've got 40 hives. They're like rabbits. They multiply, and when the bug bites you, next thing you're doing is you're building another box, and then another, and then another.
Well, I'll have to cross that bridge when I come to it, but I don't foresee it. But you never can tell. You don't ever say never.
We got this on video, so in a year we'll come back and ask that same question.
But Don's not lying. There's a lady at work today asked me if I could sell her 2 hives of bees next year, and I'm like, no.
You see that?
Told her, I said, I'm not big enough, but I told her about you, Don. I said, but I know a man that will gladly sell you bees in the spring.
Well, most of my stuff is pre-sold, you know, for the following year. I wish I had more. My son's trying to take it over and do, you know, as much as he possibly can, but you can only do but so much.
Well, here I was planning on coming down and grabbing about 3 packages next spring.
Well,
They
now,
had some different genetics.
we shake bees. We go to South Georgia. We shake bees, and we'll bring 300 packages up about every other week. But you got to get your order in, and I don't take orders until February. And as far as I'm looking at right now today, and for the next while, I'm going to keep my prices the same. There's other people I've already talked to that's already put an increase on their queens and their packages. We're in a major shortage of bees right now, so some of your larger companies, the big commercial guys, they're actually going to try to take advantage of that, I guess. But I'm not no big-time producer. You know, basically, I'm running some hives here as a learning school. A teaching yard is what this is. So my numbers might run from 200 to 500 here. So, you know, it takes a lot of bees if you want to shake a bunch of packages on a regular basis.
So these packages are not actually bees that you tend?
Yeah. Well, see, my situation is I moved up north of Atlanta at the edge of the mountains. I used to live on the Florida-Georgia line. I run 1,500 hives down there. So I still have locations. I give the honey away for the locations, and they manage my bees for me. So I go down there with the understanding I shake bees in the fall and in the spring.
Okay.
But you know, one thing that you can check on the internet or on any of these chats or anything else, anybody who's ever made an order with me, if they order a package or they order queens, they end up getting it. There's a lot of people who like to cut prices and then they overbook, and then when it comes time to deliver, they have all these excuses. I have a reputation that I built on just that fact there. When I take an order, then you know you're going to have that order.
Now, are the nukes you sell out of your yard there? Because you said you shook bees in South Georgia.
Right. I shake my packages, a lot of them from South Georgia. I shake packages here now, don't get me wrong, but I don't have a large amount here to shake. We can shake 3, 5, 10 packages, strictly as learning. But right now, we've got, there's 20 to maybe 30 nukes right now that's ready to go. And I have 20 of them sold for a guy coming out of Texas and one guy from Florida and one guy out of Alabama. So between the three, I need to get 75 nukes up right now. And people will throw their hands up and say, you can't sell bees after the spring. I sell more bees from June to November than a lot of people do.
Hey, Don, I made about 6 splits this week, and I've had a lot of trouble with my bigger hives robbing the time out of them splits. Is there a good way to slow that down?
Well, you've got to have entrance reducers in there for one thing, and then put some feed out there.
Out in the main yard?
Yeah. My main yard right now has got about 35 to 45 5-gallon and 2-gallon buckets out there full of sugar syrup. And I just drill holes in there, and I just let them all come and get it. So when you got that much feed out there, they're not likely to go robbing, because it's like a burglar. A burglar comes to your house, he's going to end up getting shot. But if you can go to a free cafeteria and get a sandwich without being shot, that's where he's going. So these bees are, you know, they're helping themselves out there.
I don't understand that. They're all being fed. I don't know why they're wanting to rob. I mean, I've got the entrance reducer down to 3/4 and got a robbing screen on all the splits, and they're still robbing the time out of them.
When you say you're feeding them, how much are you feeding them, and how many bees are you trying to feed?
Well, I'm feeding them all they'll drink.
Well, that's not telling me much now. I'm feeding a barrel of sugar about every day. That's 450 pounds, and you know it's going to take right now, this time of the year, 3 to 5 pounds per hive feeding them if they don't have a honey flow.
Well, the goldenrod's starting to bloom here now.
Well, when the goldenrod starts to get going real good, then they won't even take your sugar water.
Well, that's what I noticed. The main 2 hives, they're not drinking hardly any. Now the splits are drinking really hard. That's
Well,
why I
they're
don't
being
understand.
relaxed. You know, you got to expect that.
Yeah.
You
That's why I
see
didn't understand why he's robbing. Because, I mean, the big hives are not drinking all I give them.
Well, it's hard to say why they're robbing, but, you know, are you feeding with entrance reducer or entrance feeders, or are you feeding with a bucket, or are you feeding with a hive top feeder? How are you feeding?
Hive top, your hive top feeders. And all
If
of them.
you're feeding a hive top feeder and if they're not leaking, they shouldn't be robbing out there.
No, it's kind of got me puzzled.
How many pounds of sugar are you feeding for how many bees?
I'm feeding about 40 pounds a week on 9 hives.
That 40 pounds is for one day.
For 9 hives?
Yeah. Yeah. You're not putting enough sugar out there. You got them on a starvation diet.
Okay.
These bees, especially splits, the reason the splits are consuming so much, those are younger bees. They're not foraging. So they're only eating what you're putting out there. If you're not putting enough out there, they're basically starving.
Okay.
You try thickening up that sugar syrup. At least the thickness of peach syrup. When you open a can of peach syrup and you see how you pour it, it's fairly thick. That's what you should be feeding nukes right now.
Well, when I put that in, I've been mixing an old blender, and I fill it all the way to the top with sugar, then put the water in it, settle down enough to mix it. And I mean, that's thick.
Yeah. Blender, I don't know. That's a small amount. My blender is a big 2-horse motor on a 55-gallon barrel. I would thicken up that sugar syrup and feed more of it, and that's going to end up taking care of a lot of your problem right there.
I'll give it a try.
That's one thing I've been blessed with this year is I haven't had one instance of robbing yet. Of course, we've had something flowing the whole summer because when I did all those splits, I took almost 3 boxes of honey off of the hives to redistribute to the nukes I'd made earlier this year because they're already in 3 boxes of, 3 brood boxes and 2 boxes of honey on top just from because I extracted July 4th weekend and they still filled it right back up.
Well, that's a bad problem to have.
Yes, since I didn't take any of it off.
Well, see, you could take that honey. That's what I'm doing. A lot of my honey is making splits with it. And that way you don't have to extract it. You don't have to bottle it. You don't have to put it in buckets or whatever you're doing. And
yeah, that's what I did. I just redistributed it amongst the nukes.
I'd use all I could, especially, in the fall. Get those nukes going. Fatten them up. Get them ready for winter.
Well, I put 5 frames on just about every one of them of completely capped honey.
That's a lot of honey to put on a nuke. 1 or 2 frames is more than enough.
Well, my nukes are in three boxes already.
Whew. Those things are ready to split 3 times each now.
Well, a little late in the season for that for me, though.
Where do you live?
Chattanooga.
Nah.
I don't have the queens. That's the problem.
Well, you don't have queen cells?
Well, yeah, I just used them in the 3 splits I made.
Well, make some more queen cells. Instead of putting 3 boxes high, cut them down to 1 or 2, and they're going to make queen cells. I got hives out there right now making queen cells. I'll be using those. There's probably 6 hives out there right now, and they're spaced out to where I'll have cells for the next 10 to 15 days.
Yeah, because I cut all of mine down to 2 boxes, the big hives. Just split them, took a frame of, some bees, a box of brood and box of honey and set it over there and called it done. Threw a queen cell in them.
Well, if you got a sealed queen cell, you don't need to even put no brood in there. A frame of honey or 2 frames of honey and shake 3 frames of bees in front of the hive and let the nurse bees climb in the hive, have an entrance reducer. Old bees fly back and they'll still forage for the original hive. Once that cell is sealed, you don't need no brood in there to feed it, and you don't need anything else in there. If you're going to let them make their own queen cells from the get-go, then you need pollen, you need honey and everything like that in there, and you need more bees. That's the best thing about having a sealed queen cell ready to go. It's going to hatch in a day to 2 days, even 3 days. Get them when they start to turn light brown and get frayed on the end just a little bit, and then they'll hatch within 24 hours.
Well, day 16 will be Monday, so.
Well, you're cutting that awful close because when you decide to make your queen cells, you should be going between 9 and 10 days. 11 is pushing it for inexperienced beekeeper. Because when you see a cell, it's already 3 to 4 days old. because they're not using an egg, and the time schedule is figured from an egg. From the time that egg is laid till it's hatched into a queen is 16 days. So if you got larvae in there, and they use a 3-day or a 4-day-old larva, that's pushing you hatching right at 12 to 13 days.
Well, these were made straight out of a frame of nothing but eggs.
Well, you're hoping there's not one in there that's 2 days or 3 days old.
Yeah. Yeah, because all it
You
was
gotta
was
look
just,
real close, and when you look down in that cell, you see a dry cell that's polished with an egg laying down in it. That could be right at 3 days. But if you see any signs of white milky substance, that's where they're starting to feed it. It's already 1 day or a day and a half old.
yeah, these were all just nothing but a polished cell and the egg.
Okay, well,
Because I'd already robbed all of the other brood out and left her with a couple of empty frames. And then I went back 2 days later and pulled the frame that she'd laid in.
Yeah. Well, that's one way. That's basically how I set my timing box up. And you just rotate your frames from the center to the side.
I'd watched that video, and that's when I decided to go in and pull all of the broods and just give her a couple of drawn frames and let her to see what she'd do.
Yep. That's why I put things out there so you can try them and see that they do work.
Oh, it works.
Oh, yeah.
All done. Thanks for letting me be on. I got to go. I'll be back next week.
Okay, we'll see you. You have a good
All right.
one.
You too, Don.
Yeah, he was talking about not having enough time. I was talking to your Matt here in Indianapolis, and I'm way north of Chattanooga. I'm in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he said as long as you got queens, you could split first week in September here.
Yep. See, there's a lot of people out there don't want to share good information, and they're afraid, I guess, you're going to get ahead of them or you're going to sell more bees. But sometimes, you have to take a chance. And, if it works, it works. But the majority of people that's doing the stuff that I'm putting out there find it does work. It's not costing them nothing. Evening, Michael.
Hey, first time on.
Good. You got some bee questions for us? You just jump on in there. We're all here to learn.
Well, I'm from North Carolina, around Raleigh, and I was wondering if it is too late in the season to do the splits for this year and still be able to get them through the winter.
Well, what are you going to split into? Are you going to run 5-frame nukes through the winter? Or are you going to run double deeps? What are you going to try to do?
Well, I've got 3 hives and 1 nuke now. One of my hives is a 1 deep, and then the other 2 are 2 deeps. And I would probably run them through the winter in nukes, is what I would think.
The nukes will go through the winter much better than a double deep. I'm probably straight across from you and down south of you a little bit. I make my splits all the way up in mid-October. As long as you see pollen coming in and your temperatures are not dropping for long extended periods below 55, you're good to make queens. But everything can be adapted to, and you could make queens under other conditions too. I mean, if you got temperatures where it's going to be 50, 55, 58, you just put extra bees in there. More bees cause more heat, so you can. It's basically like you're setting up an incubator.
So
If
do
you're
you
gonna
recommend
do
taking?
you got to adapt.
Do you recommend taking the deeps that I have now and splitting them out to nukes and just run nothing but nukes through the winter?
Well, that's strictly up to you, but in September, I try to get all my. Right now, I've probably got a couple dozen double deep 8s out there, and some of them got 1 super of honey. And most of those will be split. Each of those will be 4 to 6 splits. I took one this morning at 6:45 out there. One of them was a single with 1 super of honey on, and I made 4 splits off of it. If you have 3 hives, double deep, and you have losses and you lose 3 hives, you lost most of them. But if you take those and make 6 or 12 nukes out of them, and if you lost half of them, you're still ahead. Numbers play out, and a nuke is more conservative on using honey and can maintain heat much better.
That may be what I do then. This is my first year at it, and I've had decent success in the spring. It seems like through the summer, I lost a couple of queens, and for whatever reason, and I put some new queens in, and they just haven't taken back off like they were early in the spring.
You've got enough drones?
Well, that's what I'm concerned about. Where I've got them at is in a very rural area, and I'm not aware of any other beekeepers in that general vicinity. Not saying they aren't, and I'm sure there's some feral bees around.
Are you seeing drones in your hive?
I do have some drones in my hive, yes.
Well, if you've got 3 hives and you're seeing drones in there, more than likely you've got enough. But if you're in a rural area, that's one reason why a lot of people can't make queens, because predators. You got dragonflies, you got birds, you got wasps, you got the European hornets, you got a lot of predators out there. And that queen has to fly out in order to get mated, and sometimes she's going to get mated 4, 10 times, you know. If she's only getting mated once or twice or even 3 times, you're going to have less viable queens.
So taking them through the fall and into winter, I've heard you speak of trying to move away from sugar water as feed and move more to honey. I don't have enough honey in the hives I have, I don't feel, to feed them all winter long. So do you recommend trying to find honey from somewhere, or to just continue with sugar?
Well, I wouldn't suggest trying to find honey, because you don't know what you're getting. And
Right.
you could be getting yourself into more headaches. You still got at least 3 or 4 months to build them bees. And when I say don't feed sugar, what I'm trying to refer to is don't feed sugar water from November to February. But now, in an emergency situation, you could put a couple paper towels across the top bars and just put your 3 or 4 cups of dry sugar in there, and that'll keep them from starving. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
So I'm learning.
Well,
Well-
the dry sugar is also good for keeping down the moisture.
Well, the bees are going to give off moisture. That's natural. And, you know, if you some people like to spray the pile of sugar. I don't like to do that, because it gets hard then. But if you let the moisture itself, they can keep that pulled off. Now, some people make a sugar patty to put on there, a fondant basically, and they make a ring with a bottom in it, with holes in it, and they're mixing up sugar and just making fondant and setting it in there. I kind of believe that right now you can build in bees to where you shouldn't have to feed them. Right now they're bringing excess honey. If I was in your situation, you know, I would pull all the honey as soon as it's capped. You could always feed honey back. Much better to feed honey back than just trying to feed sugar too.
That reminded me, Don, you were talking about you don't run any inner covers.
Nope.
How do you deal with the moisture content in the hive without an inner cover and an exit?
Well, if you look at the videos and listen to the different hangouts that I've had, I'm a big believer in drilling all the boxes. Drilling them either with a 3/4 or a 1-inch bit and putting a piece of hardware cloth. My brood box, if I'm running a double brood box, they each got a 1-inch hole. All my supers got a 1-inch hole. I'm running a hive top feeder, and when we get a big fluctuation in temperature, I can slide the lid back, and then I have positive ventilation. It's just like a chimney effect. They pull air from the front, and it exits out that hive top feeder because it's got a screen in it. And the way it's fixed, bees can't get in and rob it. Also, if you want to make more honey, all you do is fill that thing up with water. Now you've got all the bees going out bringing in nectar instead of half of them hauling water back to the hive for the younger bees.
Hey, Don, this is David.
Yeah.
Okay. This is, I think, my 4th year in this, and the first 3 years I've had difficulty. I might make it, I think I've had maybe 3 or 4 hives at the most, just in the backyard. And I'd go into the fall, go into winter. I think the most hives I ever went into winter was 3. I've never come out with more than 1. Usually, I think most of the time they starve out, you know, with honey an inch away. I think this last year I had 2 hives. They were starved out, and I still was able to, when things thawed out, I think I got like 5 gallons per hive, and I had double beaks. So from listening, it sounds like at the moment I've got 7 and a nuke going right now, with as many as 4 deep or medium boxes on each. So from what you just said a while ago, it might be better on some of those, if they're nice and strong, to go ahead and split them down and try to go into winter with much smaller volume, whether it's a deep, a nuke, a medium, whatever, than try to do double beats and all that kind of stuff that, like you said, kind of spread them across and maybe have 10 or 15 going into winter rather than having 7 going into winter. Am I
Where do
correct?
you live?
I live in Arkansas. I'm just across the river from Memphis, Tennessee. I actually work in Memphis, and I'm just a little town. I live in the middle of a town, probably about 20,000 people. So I'm just right in the middle, and I've got, you know, in the backyard.
Well, when you say you're being hard and you run a double deep, you realize that they eat twice as much honey in a double deep as they do in a single. If you just broke your hives to a single with a hive top feeder, they'll do much better if you don't want to split them. But if you split them, now you're talking numbers, and more numbers will go through the winter than one big strong hive, because the more boxes you have on there, the more cubic inches that those bees have to heat. And the way they heat is they have to eat honey. Now, one thing that's killing bees that people don't realize is moisture. Moisture will kill bees in Arkansas, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. They'll kill bees faster than the cold weather. They can live in 40 degrees with no moisture. Well, if they have moisture, they will die. But in Alaska, it's dry, 40 below, and they survive. The moisture is the biggest thing, and people are bundling their bees up, and their bees can't breathe. They're exhaling carbon dioxide just like we are, and it condensates in the hive.
Okay, I think all but 1 or 2 of my hives, I think all but 1 or 2 of them have got screen bottom boards. They're full size 10 frames. Okay, so okay, I need to look into the moisture control.
Take your screen bottom boards and find somebody that thinks they're great and sell them to them. Get you some solid bottom boards.
Okay, I guess I've just been trying to be overly conservative because I have not had, you know, successful getting through winter. So I've just been being extremely conservative and almost skittish of doing very much.
Well, here's the whole thing that people don't understand. Everybody's out there saying, get these screen bottom boards, but try something yourself. Everything I try to put out there is common sense. Walk in your grass at 6 o'clock in the morning or 6:30, 6:45, and look at your feet. They're soaking wet. Now, as soon as the sun hits that wet grass, that moisture goes up in the hive. Now you create yourself a moisture and a fungal problem. Now, next thing people say, oh, I got this screen bottom board, I got an insert you can slide in there. The minute you do that, you isolate an area where the bees can't clean it. Then they start building up underneath that thing you slid in there, that little partition. You got wax moth eggs, you got small hive beetle eggs, you got roaches, ants up under there, they laying eggs. So bees have to scrub that bottom board. You know, it's common sense stuff. If you're running inner covers, I don't have to come there and look in your hive. I'll guarantee you've got ants, roaches, and hive beetles in there because you're creating a place for them to live. So there's a lot of little things that you can correct yourself that's not going to cost you nothing. If you want to make honey at least 20 to 30% more, don't run metal on your hive. For your top cover, instead of running metal up there, use plywood, paint it. If you got metal and you don't want to take it off, lay a piece of plywood up there and paint it white to reflect the heat off. That metal is a heat sink. Takes 20% to 30% bees just to maintain cooling in that hive.
Yeah, I think I've got half of them are wood with metal, and the latest ones I bought are all the little those plastic ones that go on top.
If you're using plastic covers, you're running a big moisture problem. Go out first thing in the morning. If you got a hive top cover, a lid that's made of plastic, go out there at 6 or 7, lift it up, look at underneath it. It's going to have droplets of water everywhere. One thing to do, you don't have to believe a thing I'm saying, but think about a tree in the woods. They don't have screen bottom boards. They don't have queen excluders. They don't have metal, and they survive. It's all these little gadget people throwing on these bees that's causing problems.
Yeah, it's the same thing. I'll play bagpipes as well, and I've gotten very amused at every time a new gadget comes out or a new person wants to learn how to play the pipes, they buy every gadget out there, and I'm like, look, I tell them, I said, just learn to play the pipe. Keep it simple. I mean, the simplest pipe you can, and don't add anything until you can prove to me that you've got a problem that thing fixes.
Well, see, if you look, and I've got over 250 videos out right now. Not one of them videos asks you to buy a thing. Any problem that you discuss, I'll give you 2 or 3 solutions for it that ain't going to cost you nothing. So you ain't risking nothing except trying it. And the majority of people that come on this chat, if they've tried 10% of the stuff that I do, they've increased numbers and they have healthier bees.
But my hives are basically, they're not out in the middle of the sun or anything. They are kind of not in a grove quite like yours. They're under some crepe myrtles and stuff, but which of course everybody around here says is the wrong way to do it. But anyway, I'm going to keep listening for a little bit in case somebody else has got questions.
That's how we're going to learn.
Don, I got to run. Thanks for everything.
Okay.
Les, thanks for sending me the link. I still not getting an invite. I don't know why, but.
Well, I sent invites to everybody. I got a whole list that I sent out.
Who knows?
Well, you see some weeks that I have no audio. Maybe it's Google, maybe it's just me. I'm not very smart on a computer.
I'm not either. You guys take care.
All right, you have a good one.
I don't think it's you, Don. I think Google's acting up because I haven't been getting invites at all.
Well, I've got a list, and everybody that's been on that list has been getting an invite. I think 2 weeks ago there was probably 200 or 300 people that was trying to get on, but you know, Google only lets 10 people get on the video chat, but they can listen or they can watch. It's being telecast, so it's recorded up on YouTube, so most anything out there you can replay it and hear it.
I got a quick question for you. When you do your nukes, how many frames of brood and stuff do you give them, and empty frames do you give?
Well, when I first start out, I'm starting out with queen cells. So most of the time I'm using one blank frame with a starter strip, 1-inch starter strip, and I'm using a frame of honey. if I got a queen cell that's sealed, there's no need for brood. I don't put brood in there and risk that until the queen comes back and she starts to lay. Once that happens, then I add a frame or 2 frames of brood that's hatching, and then I got a nuke that's ready to sell. Because each frame, is, when the bees hatch from 1 frame, that's better than 3 pounds of bees. Evening, Joey.
Hey, Don.
You got the chairs set up. You must be expecting me over there.
Yeah, actually, I'm sitting outside. I just got finished building some more nukes and frames. We just had a cool little rain.
Yeah.
When you sell your nukes in that, what's your ratio for frames?
What is my ratio for frames? I have 5 frame nukes that I'm selling, and 5 frames are covered with bees. And I like to, if it's a new beekeeper, I like to have at least 1 good frame of honey in there and a frame of at least half a frame of pollen.
So all your
2 to 3 frames of sealed brood in there.
So all your frames would be drying out pretty much then, right?
They should be. I mean, I've had people come here and I'll look through, you know, my philosophy of selling a nuke is, my queens is, I walk the customer through the yard and I tell them ahead of time. If you see a queen, you don't like that queen. If you see a nuke that you don't like the pattern, if you don't like anything, you're not going to offend me. I'll get you another. And if somebody wants 10 nukes, I always have 15 or 20. I have extras, so I want the customer to be happy. But I also tell them once they hit the road, them are their bees. So don't, you know, mess with them, kill the queen or whatever, and bring it back. You want to try to treat the customer with honesty, and you won't have to spend dollars advertising.
Because I'm actually getting this week coming. The state inspector's coming. He's actually coming to inspect to make sure I can sell the bees and start breeding queens too, you know.
Well, that was actually discussed, I guess, a week ago. Now, not all state inspectors is the same. If you're going to sell bees, know your rights. I've had bee inspectors come here that are perfectly good. Then I've had some that are complete idiots. When I see a beekeeper open a hive, spread the frames, grab the center frame, and rip it up out of that hive, I know he's inexperienced. And then if I'm not used to dealing with him, I watch him get ready. If he puts a pair of gloves on and he comes into my bee yard, I say, nope, you ain't wearing those gloves. And if he starts giving me some lip, then I say, all right, this is a commercial bee yard. I don't want to contaminate it. I don't know where those gloves been. I've watched my one inspector come here, and just got out of college, never sterilized his hive tool. Now he's out, he's inspecting for flower brood. If he comes here and spreads that in my yard, he could wipe me out. So, you know, you have the right. If he doesn't want to listen to you, all you have to do is say, point to the hive you want to inspect, tell me what frame you want to look at, and I will pull it. If you're going to get into selling bees and you buy a queen for $250, $350, and you got some idiot that don't know how to handle a frame or a hive tool, then you got some damage going on. Don't be afraid to speak up. They're there to serve you, not you to serve them. You're paying your fee. Get what you're paying for.
Okay.
You know, you're just starting out, so don't let the state inspector overrun you. The majority of them, they know what they should do and what they don't want to do and they shouldn't do. All he's coming out to and what he's legally allowed to do is check for disease. Most beekeepers or bee inspectors won't tell you, you got mites, you got beetles, you got anything else. All they're looking at is free from disease. And if they give you an inspection and pass you, that's all you have to worry about.
From what I read on with comments and stuff like that that people post about the not this inspector, but about, I guess, the inspector that's in charge of my area, they say he's pretty decent and there's no problems, you know.
Well, you have to realize this is your money, this is your income, and if they get in there and they're bad, they can cause you some damage. Now, if a bee inspector comes out with one of those big fancy J hooks, I tell him right away, he's not using that. You have to use a standard tool.
He was trying to. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. He was trying to inspect my hive without me being there, and I told him, I said, I want to be there.
Well, they're supposed to have you there. Most states will require you to be there. Unless you have a inspector you have a rapport with, and then he'll let you go ahead, and you can inspect the hives without him being there.
But at least the good thing is with me, where I'm at, I'm actually on a power area where they produce power and stuff through windmills and stuff. So at least there's always going to be people there and cameras. So he can't just walk on without getting permission,
Well, the cameras and stuff is not the big deal there, because you can have an inspector go there and cause more damage, and you can have 30 people standing there watching them cause the damage. If they don't know what they're looking at or what to watch for, they don't know. They just figure this is a guy from the state. He knows what he's doing. He's got the authority to look. But he doesn't have the authority to damage your stuff.
Well, these guys that work there, they'll chase him off if they don't like him. I'm serious about that. They'll chase him.
Well, I've spoken up to several bee inspectors, and sometimes they get a little hasty about it, and they'll call their supervisor. But when all's said and done, the supervisor will tell them that, I've been doing this a long time. I know what I'm talking about. For this, you've got to realize they're inspecting hives that maybe have foul brood, and if they contaminate their gloves, their hive tool, and they're in your hive, now you've got contamination. Might not show up for a month, 2 months, but it can wipe you out.
Oh, I took pictures of. Can you send me your email? I took pictures of what I was talking to you about last week, about that stuff that looks like it's like a bunch of larvae like blended together.
Larvae blended together? Well, you got a milkshake going?
No, but you know what I mean. That's why I'm trying to describe it. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like a bunch of larvae that's like squished together, but. If I could send you the picture, you could take a look at it and probably tell me what it is.
Where's it at? In your hive, or is it in a frame?
It's on the frames. It's in some spots on the frames.
Well, unless you got cold weather, the only thing that would be white there would be chilled pupas, larvae that is gotten chilled or overheated if not enough bees in there. But any white milky stuff in there, that's the only thing I would say it would be.
I mean, to me, it doesn't look like it's like, what do they call that, the bread or something that they make?
Well, you're talking about the pollen that they mix up?
Yeah, it doesn't look like that.
That there is not that. Usually that is pollen that is going to be a yellowish looking, or it could be a reddish looking, and it's mixed with honey, and it's not going to be in great amounts. They deposit that in the cells when they're feeding the bees. Now, if you got hive beetle damage in there, you could have a bunch of maggots, and if the maggots have been, cooking in there for a while, you can have some white slushy stuff in there.
Well, I don't have any beetles or nothing. I go up every week and I check, and I don't see any damage like that.
Well, I have no idea what it could be.
But it's only on the new hive. Oh, well, the new hive that I just created.
Yeah, well, unless the bees could have went out and picked up something, sometimes there's fast food restaurants around, and sometimes if they got like a Dairy Queen or something, the people throw, unfinished milkshakes, stuff like that around. The bees will pick up a lot of stuff if it's got any kind of sugar content, and they'll haul it back. I had a guy having red-looking honey, and he was getting syrup from Coke cans and beverage cans. Had beehives close to it.
But I'll send you the photos so you can take a look at it. You'll probably tell me it's nothing.
Yeah,
I just want to be safe, you know.
It's on my webpage, but it's beekeeper4u2@gmail.com.
Okay.
I might not get a chance to, I turn my computer on once or twice a week. You know.
Oh,
Like this morning, I was out in the bee yard, working early, and sometimes my wife has to come out and get me when people call at 8 or 8:30.
Well, it's no big deal. I mean, I don't think it's a disease or nothing because the bees are healthy and
Yeah.
nothing's dying on me.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Hey, Don.
Yeah.
Looking at your videos, look like you're doing a lot of community or open feeding lately.
Yeah.
When you switch from your hive top feeders to the open feeding? Is that any dearth? Anytime there's a dearth, or is there other circumstances?
Well, right now there's honey coming in, but I'm still feeding a lot. I'm putting out 35, 40 barrels, buckets of sugar water right now.
Okay. So I'm feeding.
They're not going to pull sugar water if there's a lot of honey coming in. But see, I'm feeding a lot because I'm using starter strips, and we put a lot of starter strips in, and we're building nukes constantly. So the bees are always building wax in foundation.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing too. I've got a couple nukes started, and I've got some starter strips in, or some wax foundation I've made myself, and I'm trying to get them to pull it. Looks like they're filling up, and I'm worried they're going to fill up everything, and the queen's going to be honey bound. They're starting to pull some wax a little bit, but it's I don't think we have a honey flow going on. So I think the only thing coming in is what I'm feeding them.
Well, if there's anything coming in at all, they're going to eat that, or they're going to harvest that rather than the sugar. They'll use the sugar as last resort. I would rather have sugar out there, and they don't need it, than to have the bees starving. Because a barrel of sugar is dirt cheap if you look at it in dollars and nukes.
Yeah.
If you're going to scale, buy it, in bulk. Don't be buying it at the grocery store.
Right. If they end up filling all the frames with nectar or sugar, will that stimulate them to pull comb faster, you think?
Yeah. Well, they have to eat either honey or sugar or nectar. They have to have something to stimulate those wax glands. And if you don't have enough bees, they're not going to hang there and start festooning. That's one thing people don't understand. You got to have enough bees, and they have to create enough heat to create that wax. That's just a natural occurrence in a beehive.
Okay.
If you set in front of a beehive,
I noticed my bigger hives seem to be pulling it a little faster. I guess as my nukes get the numbers up here in the next week or two, the queens will really started laying. I had some mated queens that are just really throwing some good patterns out, and bees are emerging. So I guess when those numbers come up, they'll start pulling faster as well.
Well, you got to have numbers there to create the heat net. But on your larger hive, go out there and sit and watch. Every so often, it'll look like a little dandruff that's blowing out of the hive. That's where the bees are hanging there, and they're creating wax platelets. And what they're not using, chewing up and making out wax, it hits the bottom board, and they're in there beating their wings, and every so often they blow it out.
Okay.
It's just a natural thing. Most people don't even know what's going on.
And I think I heard you right when I was joining. Someone had asked you about how many frames you use to start a split this time of year. I think you said 2 or 3. Is that?
I start with the minimum, because when you make a split or you're going to start a nuke, you want to risk the least amount of resources, because when you put that queen cell in there, and if you put too many bees in there and something happens to that queen, you've lost a lot of resource. That's why we used to run a lot of mini mating nukes. That's where you have it's a 6 1/4 frame, basically cut in half. There's 4 frames in a small, it's about 1 foot cubicle. And you got a small hole, you put a queen cell and a cup of bees. That's all it takes to keep that cell warm or cool. And when she flies out and she comes back, all you've lost is a cup of bees if she doesn't come back. And then once she starts laying, you catch it. But they're high maintenance. You have to work them full time. There's no part time. And most people that are getting into bees, they can run 5-frame nukes. And if you've got a job and you get busy and you can't work them, you can throw a 5-frame medium nuke on, or a super on top, or 2 or 3 supers. And basically, you've got a tree. It's square, and you can work it all the way down. That's what a tree is.
Yeah, and that's
You know,
what
it's just different ways to look at it.
I've got a few of those split out. I want to bring them through the winter, maybe 4 of them, and then after winter, I actually split those in half to where I got about 6 or 8, and start producing nukes from those. Just take a frame from each every week.
You want to make as many splits as you possibly can. You know, it's not hard to make a queen. You've got a lot of people out there will throw a lot of advice out. They don't make it as a living, so they don't tell you the pitfalls. You take a 10 frame, and a lot of people are running 10 frame, they got a double D, and everybody says just split it in half and let them make their own queen. What they're not telling you is you might have 6 or 8 pounds of bees in that hive when they make a queen. If it flies out and she doesn't come back, you lost enough bees that you could have made 15 or 25 frame nukes. There's no guarantee that the queen returns.
Right.
So you have to think about that. That's why I make a limited amount of resources. When the queen returns and I see she's laying, then I go to one of my hives that is set up in double deep, pull a frame or 2 of brood, and add it right then. As those bees hatch, it boosts that population basically overnight. Because what I do is I pick a frame and I look at it, and I see brand new bees. You can actually see them cutting the caps and coming out. I take that and I set it in a nuke, and then I take one that's got caps in it and probably hatch out in a day or 2. I make sure that it's got a frame of honey. And in 2 to 3 days, that hive is going to be like 4 pounds of bees in it.
Yeah.
That's the way I do it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah, that's what I've been following. I've had really good success with it. Yeah, you mentioned making queens. I've got more queens than I know what to do with. I still have a good drone population, so I'm going to keep breeding them and keep throwing nukes out.
Well, that's one thing that I try to tell every student. They come here and they really want to get into, I want to graft. If you cut cells, there's no way in this world you can build equipment fast enough to keep up with cells that you cut. Because even a 5-frame nuke, most of them are going to produce 15, 20 queen cells. That's 20 boxes. You got 2 boxes, pretty soon. That's an all-day job building nukes. So this winter, you've got to build a lot of boxes. For every hive that you've got, you need at least 4 nukes.
Okay.
You know, most people, if they just follow 10% of what I try to tell them on YouTube or on these chats, they will be a whole lot more successful without buying all the gadgets and gizmos. And it's common sense beekeeping, basically. Ain't nothing high-tech about it.
Hey, Don, I posted the pic on your Facebook group page.
Okay. Appreciate it.
You'll probably look at it and say, oh, it's nothing, but I being in the military and stuff like that, I plan out for the worst, you know?
Well, you do what you got to do.
And it's some weird colors in there, too. Certain spots, it's like, almost in some spots, it looks like it's mold, but it doesn't look like it's mold, you know what I mean? It has that color to it.
Well, that's a possibility. You could have, mold, because, right where I'm living, we've had, 4 or 5 days in a row where it's been really humid, or it's had rain. So, You get a lot of humidity in the air, it translates up into the hive. You could have some mildew problems, especially if you don't have enough ventilation. One thing to think about is you can't have too much ventilation, but you can have way too little. And one of the biggest things that kill them bees is too much moisture.
Well, I don't think it's moisture in there though. I think they're pretty good. I just don't know what it is.
Well, it could be that the bees have picked something up from someone's garden.
Don, any consideration to quilt boxes to help with the moisture problems?
What do you mean, to fix a moisture problem?
To help with them, the quilt boxes. I've been in one of the bee supply stores in the area, and they were selling quilt boxes. Where basically, it's
they're in business to sell you all this stuff. Get a spade bit, or you can buy a forestry bit and just drill you a hole in the front of your beehive and put some hardwood cloth across it, and you'll get ventilation then.
They're just trying to get my money.
Well, 99% of everything that's in a bee catalog, you do not even need. An old man that taught me how to keep beekeeping never even owned a smoker. He just had an old cigar he was puffed on all the time. And he had a homemade hive tool. I mean, you don't need a lot of that stuff. You know, a young beekeeper coming into it, they'll drop $1,000 to get one hive or two hives, and they don't need to spend that kind of money. You don't even need to buy foundation. Now, really, if you stop and think about it, I mean, if you want to have, natural drawn foundation, you could just take an old stick and just rub wax on it, and they'll draw it down.
I had inner covers in my hives until I was listening to you on reference to the ant problem, and I still have some ants going in, but not nearly as bad since I've taken those covers off.
Well, it'll take a little time. It depends on where you live, but they'll seal that hive up, and I've noticed in the last 3 weeks they're starting to do a lot more gluing. They're gluing frames up more, and they're starting to glue the lids down a lot better. So this early and that much going on, I'm looking we're going to have an early winter. They're starting to glue up at least 5-6 weeks earlier than they normally do. Les, you ain't got no good questions tonight?
Don, do you feed oxalic acid also, or just vaporize?
You mean, do I trickle oxalic acid?
I wondered if you fed it right into their sugar syrup.
Nope, I wouldn't do that. I don't believe in trickling it. The only way I use oxalic acid is with vapor. Now, anybody who's trickling and mixing it up with their sugar water and using it as a treatment, they'll tell you right ahead that that's going to kill brood. It's going to contaminate your honey. So I use a vaporizer, and you can do it year-round as long as the bees are flying. I think it's much more effective in a vapor form than it is in the trickling anyhow. I guess it's.
I visited an apiary, and that's how they were feeding it in the sugar syrup. But I actually did build a vaporizer, and I'm 2 treatments into all my hives with it now.
How far apart are your treatments right now the first time going in? 2 weeks? If you're doing a vaporizing, I sell the vaporizers here.
Yeah, I just did my second treatment 2 days ago.
I recommend doing them every 2 weeks, 3 times, then go to once a month. But when it comes to the vaporizer, you could do it every weekend and never harm the bees. But once there's no mites, you're wasting your time. I've already chatted with a fella in Germany, and he's been using that stuff for years. And 8-10 years ago, big controversy that the trickling method versus the vaporizing was killing bees. It was harmful. And he actually tried to kill some of his hives. And he set up a test yard. Half of them was done on a regular basis, and then the other half was done, he got it to once a month, then once a week, then every other day for 3 months straight. And he says the same thing. Once there's no mites, there's no need to treat. It's non-harmful. But now, on the other hand, the trickling with the liquid, you're always going to lose live brood. You have to do it when you don't have brood in the box or when there's no honey on. And no one's telling you, but you run a very high risk of damaging or killing a queen with the liquid method. It's the same thing. I had talked to the Arkansas bee inspector several years back, and he had talked to an old man who was checking his hives, absolutely no mites. And he found out that old man was dusting his hives with garlic powder, pure garlic powder, not the salt. Had no mites whatsoever. The only drawback to that method is I would be afraid that you would descent or knock the pheromones from the queen where they wouldn't recognize her and ball her up and kill her. But now, the garlic method, feeding with sugar water, if you're not going to harvest honey for a while, I've done it here in the springtime. I've fed garlic sugar water for every 3 to 4 days for about 4 weeks, and you will knock the mites right out of that hive. You know, I treat and I teach a lot of methods. So one beekeeper says, hey, I wouldn't like this method. I want to do a different method. I teach you a lot of different methods, and you have to pick the one you feel the best with.
Well, on your advice and some other reading I've done, I went with a vaporizer, and I was able to build my own. So saved a few dollars there.
Yeah, well, if you're using a vaporizer and you're doing it properly, your bees die, they're only going to be dying from starvation. That's the only way they're going to die. Anybody that's used a vaporizer has got very minimal losses. Now, the man that builds those vaporizers, for me, we're coming up with a way to vaporize on a faster method using a blowing system to vaporize and blow the oxalic acid in a hive to where you can cut the 1 minute to 3 minute treating time down to 3 to 5 seconds. It's basically as fast as a fogger, but with a lot more kill ratio. But we're not going to put no prototypes out till he gets the deal patented.
Mine takes about 2 minutes between heat up and pretty much.
The one that we're using right now, the vaporizing is about 20 to 25 seconds on a good strong battery. Your cool time down to cool the unit off again is about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. Now, I don't like to do it, but I have a student that basically when he pulls it out, when it's 30 seconds, and he's got the vaporizing, he's got his scoop measured, ready, he dumps it in while the unit is hot and jerks it up into or shoves it up into the next hive and throws the rag in the entrance. Personally, I don't like to do that, but he's doing 100 hives real fast. I like to let my unit cool off and, put the acid in, plug it up, and then stand back so I don't have to breathe any vapors in it.
Yeah, my last treatment, I actually did about 5 of mine right quick in a row.
Yeah.
You got to get that scoop in there and get her in fast.
Yep. then if you start getting too much inhaling that, it's not too good for you.
It doesn't smell very good for you.
Well, I'm glad you joined the chat tonight, and you got any questions, we'll try to help you out, and maybe we can learn some tricks from you.
Well, last year I took your advice on essential oils and built my bees up early with them, and all my colonies made it through the winter.
Well, the simple things that I put out, they work, and it's not costing you big bucks. And I guess I stir up a lot of ripples through the bee keeping community, but some people think I'm a real nutcase, but when you look at the amount of people that follow me, and if you listen to what they're saying, they're not losing hives in the numbers that people out there are reporting. And when you tell people you're running as many hives as I am in here, and then you're losing very little hives, they don't want to believe you. A lot of beekeepers, we're losing 50, 60%. So I think a combination of a lot of the little things that we do are doing more good. The small cell foundation is the biggest thing, and changing out foundation is the two things that you can do. You're going to let them draw their own foundation, getting old comb out, marking your frames no longer than 3 years, cut the frames down, put new wax in. That alone cuts down that mite and losses of hives.
Hey Don. You were talking about that blower for the oxalic acid.
Right.
I seen a while ago on the commercial beekeeper Facebook page, they have something like that out.
Do they?
Yeah. I couldn't describe it. It's some kind of like a real hot heat gun, and they have this cap type thing that goes in the front of it.
Yeah.
But you probably have to look into that because I don't know what everything is for that.
Well, the only thing that I've seen out there, they have a thing, looks like a bellows, that you can put powder sugar in and blow powder sugar up in a hive. I've seen that out, but I've never seen nothing other than that. The fellow that's going to be building them, I'll tell him to check into it, because he's pretty cautious about doing stuff.
I wanted to bring that up because I saw that a while ago, and it was about the time when they were talking about, I don't know what this thing is called. It's another oxalic acid vaporizer, but it's real huge.
Yeah. Well, that's the main thing, too, is you have to have a heating element, you have to have a blowing system, and you have to have something that's lightweight that can be portable and moved around out there pretty good. And if it's too big, too heavy, it's not going to sell. And then the next thing is going to be the price.
Don, how do you use the vaporizers with your nukes where you've got the inch or 3/4 inch hole in the front of them and no other opening?
Well, those there, once they get, I start those out with 1 frame or 2 frames. Once they get established a little bit, then I change them over into a regular bottom board. And I put an entrance reducer in there, and we'll get ready to do our vapor or oxalic acid vaporizer. We pull that entrance reducer out, slide the unit in there, and we treat them. I always mark the date that I treat them. That way, when I go up and down the rows, I can look at the dates, see what's been treated, what hasn't been treated. If I have a new student and I put them on doing the vaporizing or doing something else, I try to teach them how to maintain a bee yard.
You also mentioned just a little while ago not to buy your sugar necessarily from the grocery store. Do you have a good source for bulk sugar in the area?
Well, the only thing I could tell you is to look around wherever you're at, and you're in North Carolina?
Yep. Your Sam's and Costco's are basically the cheapest I've found.
You used to be able to go over there to Charlotte and pick it right up at the plant over there.
Okay.
In Charlotte, there's a plant over there. If you're a beekeeper, I guess tell them you're a beekeeper. They don't check that close. You'd have to get with them over there, and you could buy barrels of sugar. What we're doing right now is we're buying totes, and the totes are about 1,800 to 2,000 pounds to the tote. But now, the one thing good about the thing with Cuba, Cuba used to be a main supplier of sugar. And I look for them to either open a plant up in Panama City or Tallahassee and be an outlet for sugar. And if that happens, sugar is going to plummet. And one of my students is in food services, and he was here a week ago, and he said commodity market for sugar had plummeted 25% already. So I look for it to be in the pipeline like it used to be. You'll be able to buy what we call scrap sugar now, or number 2 sugar. It's non-human consumption, 7 to 10 cents a pound. But it's possible. Everybody's greedy. They're going to get as much as they can. It's like gas. They say, well, the price of gas is going to go up. The next day it's up. But they say, well, the price of gas is going to drop 15 cents. Well, it takes them 6 months to drop 15 cents. Well, if nobody's got no more questions, I'm heading to bed. We'll see if we can get audio and have a good chat next week. So get you some questions ready.
Have a good night, Don.
Everybody showing
Thanks,
up.
Don.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Everybody. Night, everybody.
Night.
Night.
Good night, Don.